Hey, what's happening, everybody? Robert Phoenix here, broadcasting to you live from Flyover, also known as Fredericksburg, Texas. Yeah, I'm rocking the baseball cap tonight in honor of the Little League World Series, which is now taking place. They're still doing, I think they've moved out of the regionals. And I think this week they have the crossovers with, hello, Nicotino. They have the crossover games with the U.S. versus, I think I think they go all the way through to the end, right? All the foreign teams play each other, then the U.S. teams play each other. So anyway, here's to the kids playing in Pennsylvania. Phillies. Hey, Sally. There's old Sally from down under. There's Suze. Hello, Suze. Hi, Judy. It's hot here, man. I'm telling you, it's a hot night tonight. I'm going to rock the baseball cap backwards tonight because Mars is still retrograde. Mercury's direct now. How about that? Yeah, that's right. Mercury direct. Full speed ahead. We like it, right? Absolutely. In fact, I'm getting my computer worked on this week. Getting a lot of stuff done on the computer. What's going on, Linda? Nice to see you in here. So, yeah, Mercury's going to be doing us right. And then we just got to get Mars back on track. And we'll be right as rain, as they say. Well, about as close to it. So what's going on out there? Hello, Beth. Beth Berry, welcome to the proceedings. What's going on out there? How is everybody? We got a Sag moon tonight. So we could be expansive. We could be emotionally expansive. Should I hug everybody like Isaac Cappy does? It depends on how emotionally expansive I want to be. I think the clock is ticking on Mr. Cappy, by the way. Hello, White Wolf 28. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I love it. We all assemble. We begin to assemble. It's like, the doors of the secret room open up. Everybody begins to file in. There's a gigantic table, right? A gigantic circular table at the center. And we're all sitting around. Waves of love. Send waves of love. Waves of love. I thought, I love these streams because they're like streams of consciousness, aren't they? They are really streams of consciousness. Is the space larger on the inside? And the space is infinite on the inside. It is infinite. Anybody can be a part of it. So I put up a post on Omarosa and Trump last week. I think I put it up on Thursday. If you haven't gone to my website, hey, Kevin, nice to see you. If you haven't gone to my website, you could check out the post that I did on Omarosa and Trump. She does not have a good chart. It was really interesting because I would say what was it? It's been about like the last 2 months. I've been talking about how Trump's going to have to deal with these open enemies. That he was going through the gauntlet, and I thought, well, maybe it's going to be somebody with a rifle or somebody with a bomb, or and here it is. It's Omarosa. It was. I mean, clearly he's not done yet. Hey, Charles. Clearly, it wasn't done. It's not done. It's not over. He still has the gauntlet. He's got until October, with Mars going through his 6th house. She mentioned you referred to a kite horoscope as a dragon. Thought that was cool. Yeah. So he's got his hands full with Omarosa. So I've been wondering if Omarosa was a plant, that maybe she was a spy all along. I don't know. I haven't gone too deeply into Miss Omarosa's chart, but there's a lot of high strange around her. And remember, she was a Democrat up until 2015. So maybe she was inserted. Just like about 70% of Trump's inner circle and his staff. So that's going to be interesting. Apparently she's got a bunch of tapes, a bunch of videos. Doesn't surprise me. So Omarosa has taken up residence in Trump's 6th house, which is true. because his sixth house is Aquarius. And her sun is in his sixth house. It doesn't really represent an open enemy, but transiting Mars going through there does. Absolutely. Hey, Anna, what's happening? Anna has just joined the ranks of being one of my students. I'm going to be working with Anna, I think Tuesday, as a matter of fact. I haven't had a lot of students in a while. I always enjoy it, though. It's fun to do the one-on-one teaching. It's one of my favorite things. So, yeah, we're going to have some fun, Anna. And, of course, Heather, who was just mentioned by Nocatino in the chat, Heather Eland was a student of mine. And we would get together every 2 weeks, and I would just download everything I knew to her. Look at her now, man. She's one of the rising stars of astrology on the internet. Hello, Amy. So, yes, it can happen to you. It can happen to you. So here's what we're going to talk about tonight as we all kind of gather together. I've got 4 charts set up over at robertphoenix.com. They're live right now, so you can just go there and open up that window, and those charts are all ready to go. So we're going to look at Bill Clinton's natal chart. What a humdinger of a natal chart is. That is. Hi, Shauna Lee. Hi, Farrah Jade. And we're going to look at his chart. We're going to look at what was going on for him when Monica Lewinsky entered the White House. So she shows up in November, and it's, I believe, what is that, 19, let me just pop this up here. Where is it? She shows up in November of 1995. That's when Monica Lewinsky begins to work at the White House. And starting in November, Bill Clinton begins to have sex with her. Now, some people, Clinton said he did not have intercourse with that woman. Do you really believe that? I mean, maybe, but come on. He's the president. He's going to want it all, right? Some interesting connections with Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton. Both are Leos. They're at different ends of the spectrum, or different ends of the sign. And they both have Taurus moons. So they were connected in an interesting way emotionally. So we're going to look at Bill Clinton's chart tonight. We're going to look at November. Specifically, I'm starting with November 1st, and what we're going to be looking for is the outer planets and how they're going to be impacting his decision-making process and his mindset, which is unstable, and you'll see why during that time. And then we're going to look at Clinton and Lewinsky together, and to see how somebody can become unraveled in a lot of ways by another person in relationship. And maybe that, for all intents and purposes, it has some kind of, karmic overload. And then lastly, I was playing with Elon Musk's chart, because Elon Musk is having a hell of a time right now. Are you guys following all this? Wow. Where do you start, man? I think Elon, although he doesn't have any intense Saturn transits or Pluto transits, we'll check on some of those things. I think Elon Musk will make it through this time, but he's borderline right now. So if you haven't heard the latest, Azealia Banks, who is a rapper, she's weird, man. I mean, okay, let me just preface this. And I want to talk about this in a larger context, because what I think is weird is becoming more culturally prevalent now. And there are a lot of reasons sort of why this is taking place. So if you look at, let's go online and look at Azealia Banks cleaning out her chicken coop. It's fucking disgusting. So she's a nominal hip hop artist, talks more than she actually creates music. And she's a Gemini. Got to factor that in. So she likes being provocative and playing devil's advocate, and kind of Gemini trip, right? And she's into voodoo, and there's pictures of her with like a freaking sander, and apparently she had turned part of her kitchen into a place where she like slaughtered roosters or chickens, and she's got work goggles on and a sander, and she's trying to get the blood off. I mean, so I'm just giving you a picture of Azealia Banks. She comes from, I guess, kind of a Haitian background. So, hey, it's normal. It's cultural. Cheers. But this, it actually might be a lot more normal than we think in many ways. I was cruising cable last night, and I had no idea. CBS has a series, a primetime series about Jack Parsons. I had no idea. There's like 10 episodes. It's called Strange Angel. And Jack Parsons, one of my most popular videos over at Gaia was on Jack Parsons, the astrology of Jack Parsons, and the conception of the horror of Babylon through a series of events called the Babylon Working, which took place between Parsons' wife, Marjorie, and L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons were good buddies. They knew each other from the Navy. L. Ron Hubbard was sent to spy on Jack Parsons. L. Ron Hubbard was a naval intelligence, and Jack Parsons was a rocket whiz kid. And he was the guy who helped start JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And those are the roots of NASA. It all comes through Jack Parsons. And there's a book out there called Strange Angel. And the TV series is based on the book. And in the TV series, apparently, Aleister Crowley plays a large role. It's Parsons' connection with Thelema. This is big stuff. They've decided to popularize and lionize Jack Parsons. And Jack Parsons, like one of the rumors about Jack Parsons, he used to have sex with his mother. And I'm not saying that TV should be this, portal of absolute decency and moral, shining moral values, because obviously it's not. I mean, those days they're long gone, right? They're see you later, sayonara, goodbye. But on the other hand, this really fits hand in glove with kind of what we've been seeing over the course of the last, really, I'd say 8 to 9 years. Like for me, when I began to get really cognizant of all the signing and the signifying in the media was when Jay-Z started to really come forward with Illuminati symbolism in his hand gestures and on his clothing line. It was like, wow, okay, here we go. This is the revelation of the method. This is the externalization of the hierarchy, which is a term that comes from Madame Blavatsky. Now, when she talks about that, she talks about the hierarchy as being the great white brotherhood, and that there are these spiritual giants, these spiritual titans that watch over humanity. And that comes out through things like the 7 rays. And each of these spiritual giants or these entities are actually controlling, modifying, and managing these cosmic rays. Each one of them has a ray that they're the administrator of. So you have Saint Germain, also known as Kuthumi, El Moria, Kuan Yin, the cast of characters. They're all in there. Buddha's in there, right? So This is what she was talking about. This is what Blavatsky was talking, that the externalization of the hierarchy would be at some point humanity would become aware of the presence and the effect of these spiritual forces represented by the Great White Brotherhood upon us. Well, there's another, I think, probably variation of the externalization of the hierarchy. And that one might be a darker hierarchy. And we're not talking about these ascended masters, but we could be talking about fallen angels in terms of their hierarchical relationship. Clearly, we're in this phase where there's this, how do I say this? Externalization is the best word that I can come up with it. Now, apparently in Arkansas, they just erected a statue of Baphomet with these two kids as a result of wanting to go toe-to-toe with the state of Arkansas and the rights or the right to worship any way you want. It's the mainstreaming of Satanism. And make no bones about it, Jack Parsons was a Satanist. He was a total Satanist. He would take and draw sigils. So he was a rocket scientist. That's what he was. He created rocket propulsion. The Saturn V rocket, okay? Name. Just the name alone, the Saturn V rocket is Jack Parsons, great work. So apparently what he would do is he would get up into these thrusters. And the Saturn V had these massive thrusters, big, huge thrusters, huge payload. And he'd get up in there and he would inscribe sigils inside of these rocket boosters. And sigils, as we know, are they're symbols. And the symbols they represent a multitude of things, but they're essentially sort of micro portals in some ways, right? And so what he was inscribing on the inside of these payloads was essentially that the rockets be powered by the power of hell, like the greatest hellish, most explosive combustion would take place with those engines, and thus defeat gravity. And that the fallen angels would then return to the sky, right? That's what Parsons' kind of idea was. One of his ideas. So he and Crowley would get together. Not Crowley. Well, Crowley and him would communicate via mail, right? That's what they would do. Now it's time to go forward. It's Mercury's direct. We're going to go forward tonight. So Crowley actually wanted to make Jack Parsons his heir. Like Jack Parsons was going to be the next guy. He was going to be the next Crowley. He's going to be the next, the next beast. And then Ron Hubbard got involved. And Crowley didn't like Ron Hubbard. And then they started to go off on their own and do their own rituals. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Parsons was head of the OTO at one point in the United States. So he and L. Ron Hubbard started to do this thing called the Babylon working. And the Babylon working was this ritual. So, they'd have a circle, right? They would have their tetragrammatron, their circle. And it's the same circle and the same angles and the same symbols that John Dee likely used, or variant of the model. So they would have this thing. They get in there, and apparently, from what I've read, it kind of started off a little bit as a kind of a lark, but eventually over time, and this wasn't just one event, they were kind of perfecting this thing, and it was a threesome between Hubbard and Parsons' wife, and then the whole idea was to get Marjorie, the wife, into this hypnagogic state, which would be inducted by hours and hours and hours of sexual stimulation and low-level stimulants. So they would use like cocaine and amphetamine, and they would keep her kind of awake. And this would go on for 2 or 3 days, right? They would generate this kind of life force. So over a period of time, they would extend this period with her. They'd play music, and they'd be in their circle and chant or whatever they would do. And the whole idea would be to bring in what's called a moon child. And the moon child was along the lines of an inorganic being. So it didn't have an organic conception. It would actually come through as a spirit. And so this was their goal. And Marjorie was the portal for the moon child. So I've looked at this pretty intensely. And I believe that what happens is that Hubbard and Parsons unleash the lady in red upon our consciousness, which is kind of interesting because if you think back and look at the history of film, these guys are in Los Angeles. They're very close to Hollywood. If you look back to the history of film is pretty much black and white up until around 60, 61, right around. I mean, there is some color, but there's still a lot of black and white film being made. So if we were looking at somebody from a cinematic perspective, and let's say they were a vamp and they were dressed in red, which the Whore of Babylon would be, you wouldn't really be able to see it in a black and white film. So from a visual perspective or an optical perspective, the Whore of Babylon really makes her appearance in the sort of the mid 20th century. And this is, again, going to be concurrent right around the same time that L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons are playing in the sandbox, in the occult sandbox. And then after that, we begin to see women dressed in red in films. I believe Marilyn Monroe is one of them, right? So now we have the manifestation from a cinematic perspective in color, right, with the Whore of Babylon becomes emergent. And I believe it becomes emergent in the spirit of our time, to be honest with you. Now, there is a theory, and I have absolutely zero evidence to support this, but I've heard that moon child was Hillary Clinton. That's what I've heard. And I'm sure somebody in the chat has heard this as well. Which in some ways would make a lot of sense now, wouldn't it? Right? How could you persecute the moon child? Be very difficult. Now, that would assume that maybe Marjorie, would have actually had Hillary Clinton as a child. It's quite possible. But the whole idea was to summon forth this energy. And were they successful? Well, I know for a fact that something happened, something very intense, profound, deep, dark. And in the case of both men, in some ways, cataclysmic happened. Because after their final get together with the Babylon working, as they called it, L. Ron Hubbard split. He left. He was done. He says, I'm done. I'm out of here. Well, what happened to him? Well, my theory is that he got the entire Scientology thing downloaded. That's what I think happened to him. He got it all. And then after that, he wrote Dianetics. And Dianetics is really the first major bestseller as a self-help book. It's huge. Dianetics during the day was huge. It was like so successful. And L. Ron Hubbard had to cover his ass. He was making a ton of money. And the IRS was coming after him. So that's when he started the Church of Scientology. And that's when all the auditing stuff started to take place. And, the rest is history. Jack Parsons, on the other hand, dies mysteriously in a chemical fire at JPL. There's no remains. They don't find him. Absolutely no remains whatsoever. Marjorie's wife disappears. The whole thing just kind of vanishes, into this slipstream of history. And of course, L. Ron Hubbard goes on to start the most popular of the modern religions, Scientology. I think perhaps maybe even supplanting Mormonism, if I'm not mistaken, which is a modern religion, by the way. It's not 20th century, but it's close. So here we have this unveiling. It is the externalization of the hierarchy. There's this new, like, how they have these challenges, like the ice bucket challenge. There's one called the Dele Ali challenge. It's this soccer player who does this 666 thing. Everybody's doing it. It's like this 666 sort of salute. It's like the new challenge. So we're watching all this kind of unfurl right now. It's happening before our very eyes. And if you're a Christian, well, I mean, you're just like checking boxes. And you're checking your watch. Oh yeah, we've got about 48 hours or so for the rapture. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of very real, very palpable symbols, if you want to interpret them, that there is this energy that's trying to assert itself into our consciousness. And it's true. It's happening. And one of the things that is, I think, happening on a parallel track, and I'm going to bring this back to astrology. So if you're here for astrology, just give me a few moments. I'll get there. And what's happening is that on the one hand, there's this great exposure now taking place. And a lot of people are doing some very powerful work. And I think Nathan over at Lift the Veil is doing a great job bringing people onto his stream and allowing them to tell their story about going through some very dark and hellish experiences as children as part of the SRA upbringing in the SRA meaning satanic ritual abuse circles that they were bound in as children. So this is starting to really begin to rise to the surface, whether it's Voodoo Donuts or Pizzagate or, whether it's the SRA stuff, Jerry Sandusky, what's happening with the Catholic priests, which they've just uncovered back in Pennsylvania. They've got another kind of nest that they're uncovering down in South America. This stuff is rising to the surface and people are starting to see now what is going on. And reality is a really funny thing, right? Like reality is something that I believe is really plastic in a lot of ways. And not plastic in the sense that it's fake, but plastic in the sense that there's elasticity to reality. And there's actually kind of an elasticity kind of response factor with reality. So one of the things that I posted over on Facebook yesterday is there a guy by the name of JJ Redick, who plays basketball for the New York Knicks now, or the New Jersey now, Philadelphia 76ers. He's one of those teams. Anyway, he was doing a shoot for Men's Quarterly Journal, and he was in a car. It was an Escalade. And what happened is that he's there with his wife and his wife's sister, they're twins, ironically enough. And he figures out that there is in the back of this Escalade a freaking cage. And there is a small person or a child in this cage. And it was a young girl with a blonde ponytail. And he sees this. Now, okay, this is, to me, this is part of this kind of, model of elasticity for what we call reality. And as these things begin to come up, right, as they're starting to surface in more and more consciousness and conscious awareness begins to be focused on what's happening in that realm, well, guess what's going to happen? More of this stuff is going to pop up. And this is a guy, a basketball player, who has absolutely zero kind of background in any of this. Like, he's really not one of us. But he graduated from Duke University. He's an upstanding guy. He was kind of a bit of a D when he was younger, but I think he's sorted his stuff out. And he was talking about this on a podcast with another NBA player who thought it was funny. And I think he thought it was funny because, well, how do you parse that? How do you wrap your head around that? So this is what I'm talking about with the elasticity of reality. So we've got these two, and part of what this kind of group, this very dark group wants is for there to be behavior to be normalized. So there's this rush going on right now for the normalization of depravity. They want to make it cool. I mean, why do you think all those people were making jokes about doing stuff with kids on their Twitter account? They wanted to make it fun. They want to make it cool. They want to desensitize it so everybody thinks it's just a laugh, right? So this is a very interesting time. It's a super interesting time as we awaken, and we are waking up. And there's no doubt about it. What happens through the awakening process, and I'm not going to get in here and try to, root around the whole Q thing, because invariably I get a lot of Q. Look, look, all you Q folks, you just keep waking up. Just keep waking up. Just keep doing your thing. Just remember that at some point in time, you gotta cut bait. Pull that ripcord. Don't even hesitate. All right. Why don't we get into the chart of the moment? Oh, there's what before I sort of veer off into that. Let's see. Charlotte says a friend of mine died after rolfing for the engrams and the horrendous abuse he suffered as a child in foster care in the Hollywood 70s, killed himself in Sedona. Well, there are so many dark stories about kids and people. It's coming to the surface now. I mean, this is really, really profound. It's super profound. And one of the things that people are starting to figure out is the high level involvement. And it's not just like, say, floating around in a 50-mile radius in Washington, D.C. The high level involvement is even taking place at a local level with inside city government, judges, mayors, county clerks, police chiefs. I mean, there are just numbers of people that are involved at a very fundamental base level. So a lot of the stuff doesn't get lifted up and dealt with, and people are starting to find that out now. This is very intense stuff. This is very, very intense stuff at this point in time. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is apparently there's going to be like a prison strike this week, and I wanted to look at that from an astrological perspective to see if we can understand what's happening astrologically, might be able to attribute what's taking place with what might be happening with this. Apparently, it's going to be a countrywide prison strike of some sort. I guess if I was in prison, I might strike too. Aren't we all kind of in prison in some ways? Why don't we all just strike with them? Let's just show solidarity. I was talking about this last week. Let's just shut it all down. Say, hey, we're with you. We're going to shut it down too. Well, right now, the ascendant is at Pisces 9 degrees. So we're talking about a very Piscean kind of phenomena, aren't we? We're talking about prison. This is where Pisces gets its stripes in that realm. We have Neptune in Pisces. And it's starting the week off with a Neptune square to the moon. Now, by the time you get up tomorrow, Neptune would be the moon would be kind of out of that square a little bit. It'll probably be at about 20 degrees by the time you wake up tomorrow. So it'll be in a wide square headed away from Neptune, but still we're talking square nonetheless. Neptune is actually in a trine with Jupiter, and it's a pretty tight trine. Jupiter's at 14 Scorpio, Neptune's at 15 Pisces. Look, I think a lot of these guys in prison are down there. They're in there on these low-level drug offenses. There are three strike offenders who have gotten busted for, weed a couple of occasions. Who knows what else? I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm willing to bet that you're looking at about maybe 40% of the prison population being in there because they've had, that third strike, and a lot of them really low-level drug offenses. And we know that the prisons are a prison industrial complex. I mean, they make money. They had firefighters up in California, and they're prisoners. They make $1 a day, to fight those fires. So they're there for what, maybe 2 weeks fighting fires. What is that? A couple pack of cigarettes? It's a huge, huge, huge industry. So we have this Neptune trine to Jupiter, and I really hope, like, I'm not casting, I'm not looking at this from like a social Marxist perspective, like it's yet another kind of strike, right? I actually think that it could actually bring some attention to what's going on in prisons across America, and especially with that Neptune Jupiter trine that's going on right now. And Jupiter currently is in the 8th house, just right now, chart of the moment, right? But tomorrow morning, when people wake up and, these guys, maybe they're going to be hunger striking. I don't know the full extent of their strike, but Jupiter is actually going to be an astrological ally. And, if you're a conservative or you're on the right and you're looking at this as, just some kind of, uppity population that you just want to lump into kind of, this kind of liberal, social Marxist madness, you may want to take a couple steps back from that. Maybe they're generating this, perhaps, quotes around the perhaps, italicized perhaps, but maybe it doesn't really matter. So before you close your mind to everything, it might help you, it might suit you to see and understand what's going on in that world, and just who is incarcerated, what the percentage is, and why. We have got to figure out the incarceration trip, and need to. It's been too long. Are there some people that need to be taken out of society? Absolutely. Absolutely. The problem is a lot of them aren't behind bars, right? They're not. Although there are 40,000 indictments and climbing. I was watching Liz Crokin today. She's shifty. Liz Crokin is shifty. This praying medic guy, Michael Trim is not shifty. Liz Crokin is, I really spent some time watching her today. Her body language and her facial language and her eyes, she's a little on the shifty side. I'm not saying that she's not doing good work, but I've observed a little shifty energy there. Anyway, apparently November's the month. November is the month. The hammer is dropping in November. Write it down. Write it down. This is the big Q drop. It's November. That's when they just start disappearing everybody. And that's when everything gets flipped. Well, it's also when the midterms are. So what are they saying? That they're going to wait? They're going to flush people out of the Senate, Congress, get a new group in? I don't know. And I want to not here to make fun of QAnon and the people that are into QAnon, because there's crossover with me and QAnon, although Q's a little bit bigger than me. A few more followers than me. But at the same time, I'm telling you, this is it. This is it. You've got now, you have, as a QAnon person, you have a drop dead date. You have a line. It's November. So let's see what happens. We'll see what happens. But I would say, based on this Neptune trine to Jupiter, the stuff for the prison that's coming up this week would be worth looking at, because there are a number of people in there that probably shouldn't be in there, and there are a number of people in there that really should be in there, and we got to figure out what to do with them. That's another piece altogether. Should just give them all ibogaine. Ibogaine should be mandatory in prison reform, by the way. I would make it. But they don't want it to be because they want a recidivist rate. They want people coming back. You know, where else are they going to get that cheap labor? You know, maybe when AI comes on, they won't need all the prisoners to do all the cheap labor. They'll just employ AI. We'll see about that. That might be the break everybody's looking for. I was thinking about this judge down in New Mexico, and I had this thought before that really, if the one case that I could see AI actually maybe having a place besides being, I don't know, customer service rep, is in the judiciary. If you had a programmable AI, you just program case law, case study, constitutionalism, allow it to be self-learning, and then lock it so that nobody else can get in there. It was all based on logic, rationality, case study, previous data. I mean, I think an AI judge might be a bit more fair than an activist judge. Doesn't matter which side. It could be right, it could be left. But I think the AI, what would happen if the AI became really consumed with its power of being a judge? That could be an interesting movie plot right there. We got a nice grand trine happening. The sun is at 27 Leo. We're right at the end of Leo. Oh, Leo, we hardly knew you. Raced right by us. And we're about to enter into the most underappreciated sign in the zodiac. That would be Virgo. Probably the most misunderstood sign as well. The sun is going to get into closer trine with Saturn. And Heather and I talked about this grand trine. We talked about this on our stream a couple of weeks ago. It's a good grand trine. Really good. You get a lot of stuff done. It says the 29-degree Virgo, you get a lot of stuff done. Yeah, you get a lot of stuff done. It's going to be good. Saturn represents sort of the mainstream and how we do things. Uranus represents something new and innovative. It's not often these energies get to collude with one another. So you can take a new approach to things. Take a new approach to your work, a new approach to your health, a new approach to your wealth as well. Uranus floating around the second house right now in the chart of the moment. Uranus is also going to be squaring Mars and squaring Mercury. Mars is going to come into that square a bit closer when it goes direct. And I bet everybody wants to know when Mars is going to go direct. Well, I'm about to tell you. It's hot out here tonight. It's very hot. Okay. It is a sultry summer night in Fredericksburg. All right, so we're looking at Mars direct on the what do we got? The 28th. So we still have a few. Let's see. Well, we're going to be at 20 tomorrow. 8 days. 8 days. So Mars is going to get into that T-square on the 20th of September with Uranus. Keep your eye on that. Keep your eye on that day. Venus will be in Scorpio. And that sets us up for the Venus retrograde, which happens on this in Scorpio. That'll be very interesting. Ooh, interesting. It relates to a lot of the sex trafficking, the underworld relationship. To that'll be an interesting time. And Venus stays retrograde all the way until November on the 16th, and it finally goes direct. Goes direct right on my Venus. It's not too bad. And in November, Jupiter goes into Sagittarius on 11/9. How about that? 11/9. The 2-year anniversary of Trump's stunning election win. To this day, have we figured Trump out? To this day, we're into this thing for 2 years now. And I mean, the one thing is concurrent is the Uranus Sun conjunction in Gemini, and then being born on that lunar eclipse. I mean, there's always going to be some form of chaos. There's always going to be like one side that appears to be sort of functional and, maybe doing, like the right thing. The economy is kind of booming. It's a backlog of trucks. There's all that. He's got all that going on for him. His base is more wildly appreciative of him than ever before. Then the other side of that Gemini equation is he's probably got more hate, anger, and vitriol than ever before. People want to impeach him more than ever before. He's taken that Sun-Uranus conjunction in Gemini and completely atom smashed the media with it. I mean, if you're the media, you've just got to hate Trump. You've got to hate him. Unless, of course, and Trump doesn't drink. Let's say you're doing shots with him. But that's really, if you're the media, you got to hate him. Period. End of story. There was something I wanted to talk about that was mildly interesting that was regarding Trump. What was it? It'll come to me. But have we figured this out yet with him? I mean, I'm not quite sure we have in some ways. We're 2 years in. What we know is that, I mean, this is, he is the king of chaos. Carnival of chaos. I mean, this whole shit show with Omarosa, I mean, are you kidding me? I've never seen anything like this before. And I got into this, and I could tell you why I thought she was let behind the gates. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about. It was, and now Trump revoking the security clearances for these dudes. That's going to be very intense. And I thought it was because these guys are like, when Jimmy Carter got into the White House, he flushed a lot of CIA people. He did not want any of Ford's CIA people around. Didn't want them. No way. Got to go. Brought in new people. Those CIA people were not happy. They started doing kind of outside gigs, started going into South America, started doing stuff in Central America, especially around Panama, Omar Torrijos. They started to go into places like Angola. They were quote unquote soldiers of fortune. They were ex-CIA people running operations in Angola. And then ultimately, they completely derailed Carter with the Iran-Contra and the whole hostage crisis thing. And the hostage crisis killed Carter's chances for another go at the presidency. So this is what happens when you piss off intelligence assets. So here Trump comes in and he chops John Brennan off at his knees. Well, good. John Brennan deserved it. Completely deserved it. Now this other guy who is this, what is he, some commander, brigadier general or somebody, who is in on the bin Laden raid. And he says, well, go ahead, take my security clearance away. Take his away. That bin Laden raid was bullshit. It was bullshit. That wasn't bin Laden. Bin Laden had been dead since, 2000, was it 2004? So 2004, 2005, he was gone. The guy was hooked up to a kidney machine. And it's like there was no way he was going to keep going. They had some, don't you remember? Okay, go back in time. Let's go back in time. Let's get into the time machine. Let's do a Mars retrograde here. Do you remember when we used to see these pictures of bin Laden? And I'd look at these pictures and I'd say, that is not that guy. That is not bin Laden. And everything be, really gray and grainy. And, it's like, don't you think if you were bin Laden, for me, if I was bin Laden and I had all that money, right? All that money, since I was at one time a Saudi prince, wouldn't I want to have a big freaking Technicolor like presentation, with whiteboards and everything? Hell yeah, I would. I'd want to, pound my chest, like the Mandarin in Iron Man. But no, what did we get? We got these little tiny, grainy. Who is that guy? I don't know. I don't know who that guy is. But it sure doesn't look like bin Laden. And that was even before they did the big raid. Now, let me tell you, let me ask you this. You guys are switched on. You are a switched on audience. You're a switched on chat group, right? When bin Laden was captured, what did you feel? Did you feel like, wow, this is great. Oh, we can all just rest at night now. You know, we got the number one most wanted terrorist in the world. Feel jubilation? Like, yeah, America, we're great again. Did you feel that? I sure as hell didn't. Because I knew as much bullshit. That wasn't him. It was some poor bastard, you know, some poor bastard probably watching cable porn from Italy, right? And hoping that somebody from his household doesn't jump in and see him not being a good Muslim. Could you imagine that guy sitting down there, he's watching TV, and here comes the Black Hawk, you know, and you're just sitting across from this monster, right? You're just sitting there. It's like, oh, and by the way, let's drop his body at sea. Neptune, back into the mystery, back into the void, because we don't want to be anything but courteous to his faith. No disrespect for bin Laden and the bin Laden family. We gave him a fine burial at sea. So this guy says he was like, oh yes, I was the commander of the bin Laden raid. Take away my security clearance, President Trump. It was me. He was like, give me the rubber stamp. Bang! You're done. You're done. Just checking with the old chat room, see how you guys are doing. Felt no different. Yeah. Yeah, Justice Moody. I walked in on cable porn from Italy. Cable porn from Italy has its place. Aren't those the men who participated in the raid? A lot of them are gone. A lot of those SEALs are gone. Yeah. A lot of them are gone. Saddam Hussein found in a hole. Right. Yeah. Right. Like he was found in a hole. Exactly. Yeah. Most of those SEAL guys are dead now, aren't they? Yeah. Absolutely. Supposedly. Exactly. Supposedly. Down in the rat hole. All right. Let's go back into what's happened. Oh, chart of the moment just shifted. Now we have Neptune right on the ascendant. 15. The veil is very thin right now. It is very thin. Why don't we make a wish? Why don't we make a wish with Neptune right on the ascendant? Can we make kind of a small collective wish inside the chat room that we can all kind of agree upon with Neptune right on the ascendant? Let's see what happens. Let me see. Let's start throwing out some wishes in there. Let me see what you got. What do we have? Let's invoke a demon. Oh, yeah. That sounds like a great idea. Dreams, AC of Cheney at all, man, at this moment. World peace. How about a demon in service of world peace? How about that? Darcy says, making magic. May everyone see the liars. Okay, that's not bad. We'll laugh out loud. What about? How about this? That the truth can be gracefully revealed so that people can become aware of the depths of what's taking place while at the same time not losing their fucking minds. How's that? How about the graceful revelation of truth? End poverty. That's a good one. I like the ending of poverty. That would be nice. There's a lot of poor people. The graceful revelation of truth. Make it so. Truth without zombies. Is there a drink called a zombie? I've never had one. How about alien truth? Why not? We'll throw it in truth. Whatever truth is, let's bring it out. Revelation of truth through grace. Demons can be defeated. Damn straight they can be defeated. Absolutely. I mean, just look at when somebody overcomes something in their life, right? Look at what people overcome their personal demons, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's growing up in a really difficult and challenging past. People overcome demons. It's not out of the question. Okay, let's get back into the old chart of the moment a little bit more here. Venus is in lovely Libra. It is conjunct my moon right now. I'm feeling very romantic. Rosie, come over here, Rosie. Come over here. You want to say hi to the people? I want to say hi to everybody. Of course, they're a cat. They don't come when you call them. But they're right here. They're hanging out. We got Mars. We talked about Mars. That's square with Mars and Uranus. That's going to be intense. So we're talking, what, the 20th, right around the 20th of September, 9/20. Circle that day, 9/20. Intense energy. Revolutionary energy, shall we say. I wonder if that's when Alex Jones comes back in the air. I wonder if that's when he'll come back. I think he'll make a return. You know, they axed him during a Mercury retrograde. It doesn't work. Saturn, talked about Saturn. Saturn is, let's see. Saturn's retrograde. Let me see, just checking here. Yep, it's about to go direct here pretty soon. And it'll be up to the second decan of Saturn by the end of the year. And 2019, man, 2019 is going to be intense as Saturn begins to inch closer and closer towards Pluto. And that's really profound, intense, deep, planet-changing conjunction in 2020. Moon in Sagittarius, when you wake up tomorrow, you go to work, have a great spirit, right? The thing I like about Sag, it sees the best in everybody. Sees the best. And there's going to be a wide Moon Mercury trine. It's wide a little bit. But do your best so you see the best in everybody. Even during a Moon Neptune square, you might be able to fake it a bit more with a Moon Neptune square. Let's see, Venus Moon sextile. That's great, pretty harmonious, and that's tonight. You had the Moon in sextile with Venus most of the weekend, so it's been good, I think, for emotional harmonization. At least for me, it has. I've had a harmonically pleasing emotional weekend. Okay, why don't we jump into the charts on my website? Go to robertphoenix.com. If you haven't opened it already, you can go there now. And I've got some charts that are right there for your purviewing. You can check this out. Here we go. All right, so the first chart here is Slick Willie, William Jefferson Clinton. There he is, born in Hope, Arkansas. Well, we know he's a Leo. He's got that sun in the 11th house, very popular. Leo's sun in the 11th house, very popular. Squaring the moon, which means that he has issues with women in his life, as much as he also has a great deal of charisma and the ability to connect with members of the opposite sex. We'll see that in the first house. In the women, or with the women that he has strong emotional ties and connections with, vis-a-vis the moon, he doesn't always do very well with that sun-moon square. And he is stubborn. So certainly he's a bit stubborn. The women he's with would be stubborn as well, by the way. So let's look at this from the potential of like the moon as being the emotional capacitor on the feminine side for Bill Clinton. So the moon and Venus play those kinds of roles. The sun is definitely the masculine, the moon is the feminine. So he would be attracted to strong women in some ways, right? In some ways. with the moon in Taurus, which is great. Moon in Taurus, great position. 8th house, and there's secrets. There are secrets about his emotional connection with women in his life, and probably primarily with his mother. And there's this, theory that his father is actually Winthrop Rockefeller. And maybe this is a secret that his mother actually knew, and maybe Clinton, as he was growing up and became older, was told at some point in time. Perhaps that's the case. Pluto is square the moon. So what is Pluto? Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. In this case, of course, it's in Leo because he's a boomer. But if Pluto's the ruler of Scorpio and it's squaring the moon, which is, again, the kind of the feminine emotional capacitor in his life. So we're talking about scorpionic connections with women. And who do we know that's a Scorpio in his life? That's right, Hillary. And Hillary's son, she's born right at the end of Scorpio, is in opposition to his moon. So they're kind of locked in. They're locked in for eternity now. That's going to be part of their damnation and punishment, is they're going to have to spend the rest of eternity with each other. When it's all said and done, they won't be able to get away from one another. That's kind of like the Pluto Moon square. You can't get rid of the. It's like the shadow. You just try to scrub the shadow out. The shadow never gets scrubbed out, right? It's hard to let go with the Pluto Moon square. And there's obsession with the Pluto Moon square. So he could be obsessed by certain women, feminine energies. They can be obsessed by him, but it doesn't always go very well. He was theoretically he was educated overseas. We have that Uranus true node conjunction in 9th house, which is universities overseas. He was a Rhodes Scholar, went to Oxford. Apparently got kicked out because he did something not very nice to a woman. So see that in his chart for sure. This Pluto-Mercury-Saturn conjunction is quite interesting in a lot of ways. I never thought of him as being a great orator or forceful communicator, but with, all that Libra in the first house, he was clearly charming. Clearly charming. You ever see that video of him where he's being basically made up before one of his TV appearances, and he's in a complete trance? Have you ever seen that one? I wonder if that's kind of the Pluto-Mercury conjunction here, that he would be actually somebody who would be, like a lot of these other people, altered and triggered. He's got a Cancer midheaven, which means that people will, the people of this country at one point in time, like Clinton, we forget how popular he was. He was wildly popular, even though there were people on the right that clearly knew what his game was about and didn't like him, and were doing everything in their power to some extent. These are people that, I'm not talking Kenneth Starr. There were people like at a lower level that were not real thrilled with him. They knew all about his shenanigans in Arkansas and what they were doing down there. But by and large, he was wildly popular. And when we look at Cancer on the midheaven, that's sort of the energy of the United States. A lot of the United States planets would be up there in that part of his chart. So he would have a connection, through that with his Cancer on the midheaven. Remember when he was on Arsenio Hall playing the sax? I'm not a Clinton guy, but if you were mildly into Clinton, right, and you liked him and you saw him blowing the sax on Arsenio Hall, you're just like giving yourself high fives. Like, that's my president. He was very popular, very, very popular. And even after he left office, even though he was disgraced towards the end, his followers, his people never gave up on him. This is when Hillary Clinton brought in this whole idea of a right-wing conspiracy. Let's look at his first house. So he has the ascendant in Libra, and he has Mars. This is weird, right? He's got Mars and Neptune conjunction on the ascendant. To me, that's kind of, how do I say this? That's almost warlock-like with Mars, Neptune on the ascendant in Libra. That's what I'm talking about. Like, he was almost able to kind of put you in a trance, whether it was the accent or the drawl or how he delivered things, because his NLP, whatever. But he was able, I think, to really use that Mars Neptune conjunction right on the ascendant and appear incredibly charming, incredibly charismatic, and again, those planets are not just sitting there alone, inert. They're in sextile with Saturn, Mercury, and Pluto. So he's got a Pluto-Mars sextile, which is very powerful. Anytime you get into a conversation about Pluto and Mars, not Bruno Mars, Pluto and Mars, it's like having Mars and Scorpio. And Pluto-Mars people, whether it's Mars and Scorpio or Mars conjunct Pluto, Mars sextile Pluto, Mars trine Pluto, they have a lot of power. It's a lot of power, a lot of life force, a lot of chi, a lot of magnetism. So the sextile is what we use to connect with. It's not something we're born into, right? So he only had one trine in his chart, which is unusual. And it's a trine between Jupiter and Uranus. That's actually, in terms of astrology, that's pretty fortuitous. That's pretty lucky. And it also indicates that the person can be fairly good at improvisation and being able to put things together very, very quickly. And I would say that I don't think Bill Clinton is at all an academic, even though he may have studied with Carol Quigley. I don't believe he's an academic at all. Not with Mercury and Leo. I think he's somebody who's probably more of an actor. I would say that this is really, like, if I didn't know that this was Bill Clinton, I would say that this might be the chart of an actor. There's somebody who could portray a role with that Mars Neptune on the ascendant and that Mercury and Leo, which wants to be on stage, and might be able to do some good memorization with that Pluto conjunction. We've got, I think it's difficult. I've said this before. I think it's difficult for men to be Libra rising and to actually even have Mars in Libra. I think it's tough for men in some ways. So he's fascinating in the sense that he's forceful. Well, I guess maybe for some people he was a little too forceful, if you know what I'm saying. And maybe that Mars-Neptune conjunction could also be very much connected to some of the obfuscation and cover-up around some of the stuff that he did. And I'm not just talking with Monica Lewinsky, but with Catherine Willey and all these other women. Anita Broderick. I mean, maybe that's that Neptune-Mars piece that, on the ascendant level, he has kind of this veiled aggression, right? But I also think he's a bit of a witch with that Mars. It's like it's warlock energy. So that's with that Mars-Neptune conjunction. Then there's Venus in Libra, Venus conjunct Neptune as well, Venus conjunct Mars. It's all getting kind of mixed up here, swirling around. He's a guy's guy, but the ladies, like, women loved Bill Clinton, man. My grandmother loved Bill Clinton. She loved him. I remember one time I was staying with her, and I just gotten back into like the music business game, and I was working at this.com, and the housing crisis in the Bay Area in 2000 was nuts. So I was actually staying with my grandmother. It was a great time. It was like the last time I was able to really hang out and spend a lot of time with her. But so one night she was just going on and on and on about Bill Clinton. She was, I think she was in her 70s. And I think I'd had a few glasses of wine. And I said, so let me ask you a question. Like, Bill Clinton, like, walked through that door, would you do him? And she was like, well, what do you mean? Do him, like, would you have sex with him? Oh, yes. Yes, I would. See, okay, 70, and she was a Republican. She didn't really like the Democrats. She liked her money. She was a Taurus. Man, she loved Bill Clinton. Right there in the first house, conjunct Neptune. This guy got by on charm, guile and charm. But there's nothing beneath the bottom part of his chart. Look at this. There's nothing down there. There's absolutely nothing down there. Zero, zilch, nada. Below the horizon. He's all about himself. He has to be about himself and make other people feel like he's about them. That's interesting. That's in this chart. But there's nothing below the horizon. It's all about self and networking, and to some degree that 10th house. Now, what's also interesting here, this might be one of the most ungrounded charts I've ever seen. He's got no water in his chart. Who else did we see that had no water? It's just the midheaven. Remember Rudy Giuliani's chart? Same deal, no water. I think in order for somebody to have a conscience, some empathy, some compassion, they need water in the chart. If you don't have it, I think this would be kind of one of those markers for, being a sociopath. Because water brings empathy. He's got no empathy. He can model things with all that Libra, right? He can model. Like if you were feeling something, he could model it in that moment because that's something that he'd learned to do. But would that be a very real kind of emotional connection? No. He has no earth either. The only earth he has is in Taurus, and that's women in his life. Okay? Taurus. So he's looking for women, the women of his life to ground him. All right, let's move on to the next chart. This is where it gets interesting. Well, I thought that was kind of interesting. All right, here he's, okay, look at his first house. Oh boy, this is November. Now, remember, been fighting for the last 2 years with Kenneth Starr and a bunch of people who went down to Arkansas, Little Rock, and got into the Rose Law Firm and everything they were doing. And the McDougalls wound up taking the fall for a lot of that stuff. They wound up taking the fall because they were so filthy. They were dirty. They were so dirty down there. It's crazy. Anyway, so he'd been engaged in fighting these prosecutors. Now, I made a video about this earlier on, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe longer, probably about 8 months ago now. And I was talking about Trump, and they're doing the same thing with Trump, with the Russia thing that they were doing with Clinton, with the Rose Law Firm stuff and the Arkansas stuff. And the reason why they're doing it is because they may find things and they use those things as leverage. And they begin to leverage presidents, which is what they did with Clinton. They leveraged him, especially when it came to bombing places like Kosovo and that whole theater that had opened up in the central part of Europe, Bosnia. Terrible, 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 absolutely terrible. And Clinton was basically authorizing troops to play with NATO and go in and bomb and all that shit. And they were bombing Christians, believe it or not. Yes, they were. They were bombing Christians. So they were leveraging him. Now, look what's happening. 2 years now. 2 years, he's been in what? For 2 years, he has been in, go down to the bottom here, and you'll see that there is Pluto in guess what sign? Scorpio. It's right at the end of Scorpio. You see that? It's a 29 Scorpio. Wow. This is when Pluto was right on my ascendant. Those were the days. That was a crazy time. So if we go back and we back that up about 2 years worth, so we're talking, what, about another 9 degrees, roughly 8 to 9 degrees of Pluto. His sun is at 26. So he'd been in a Pluto sun square for the previous 2 years. Pluto sun square will kick your ass. It will totally kick your ass. You will be tested, and everything that will be challenged, and you have to fight for your freaking life with a Pluto sun square. Or you can surrender and let go, which in many cases can be a lot easier. Like, what would happen if you surrendered and let go? What would happen if he just came forward one day and said, yep, all this shit is true. It's right. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. We did this. And I'm here because I'm here to clear my soul. I'm here to clear my soul. I'm here to clear my relationship with my soul for eternity. That's a Pluto Sun square. There you go. Get it over with. Or you fight. And he fought. He fought with everything he had. But I'm assuming that fight took its toll on him. And Chiron, look where Chiron is, right at the cusp of his first house. All that Libran charm, all the stuff associated with relating for himself, right? It's going to be exposed with Chiron. It's just starting. It's just getting in, okay? So during the month of November, he winds up having at least 9 connections with Monica Lewinsky. So he winds up having sex with her 9 times. Okay, 9 times. 9, 10, 11. Ooh, how about that? My sense is that he is really trying very, very desperately in a lot of ways to deal with this Sun-Pluto square. Like, this guy probably wants some level of relief. And the thing about Monica Lewinsky is that she's innocent, at least according to him at that time. And then there's the connection with the 2 moons, the 2 Taurus moons. And I think in some ways he was trying to have this simultaneous sort of connection with power, release, and the familiarity of the Taurus moons, which we're going to look at. There's some significant inconjuncts here, right? Look where Uranus and Neptune are in conjunct his sun. Shit's going to happen. Things are going to happen. He's going to be blindsided, and out of nowhere, he's going to have to deal, right, with that Neptune-Uranus in conjunct. Capricorn, the government, power, use of power, abuse of power. And then we have another in conjunct here. This one is fairly quick moving. This has to do with the moon. But in a situation like this, where somebody comes into the White House in November and the moon represents feminine energy, that in conjunct will play a fairly significant role. So again, we're looking at in conjunct to Saturn, Mercury, to some extent Pluto, moon in Pisces. It's like, just it's about dissolving, letting go. It's in his 5th house, which is going to be a bit romantic. Maybe he's looking for some kind of love, gratification, maybe some egoic kind of resonance with the moon there. It's a bit of a setup now coming, right? Bit of a setup. What's going to happen is this Pluto, which has been in square with his sun, is ultimately his undoing. Look at Venus is right there too. Venus-Pluto conjunction right at the beginning of November. But it's Chiron that's going to be the key to unlocking Bill Clinton's day-to-day daily activities with relationship in the 1st house. Okay. Let's get on to Lewinsky. This is really interesting. So they're very close in a lot of ways. Like they're both Libra rising. They're both Leo, even though they're born in other ends of Leo. And their moons are both in Taurus. And his moon is in the 8th house, and her moon is ingressing into the 8th house. Now look at that Venus-Sun conjunction. There was a connection here between these 2 people. And I remember when I first started getting into astrology and I started to look at their charts, I said to myself, they're kind of connected. Like, I think in some ways, she was sort of the anti-Hillary. Look at that Sun-Saturn conjunction right there. The Sun-Venus conjunction. Moon almost conjunct. And then look at Uranus on his Venus. Instantaneous, right? That stuff happened quickly. Like, I would bet within 48 hours after them meeting, they were hooked up, right? They were hooking up. The big challenge here is that Uranus. Now remember, right? Transiting Chiron is going to be right here, right on his Mars. It's going to unlock everything. And Uranus is going to bring chaos to his life. Like her Uranus is going to bring chaos to his life. This is going to happen. And she was aggressive. Look, she has Mars and Chiron in Aries. She was aggressive. She went after him. She came on to him. That's my, did he push her away? No, sorry, Monica. I am the president of the United States, and I just can't do that with you, honey. You know, I got the people. I got the people to answer to, Monica. No. He's like going to the cigar box. Look at the Saturn-Uranus conjunction. Right there. Conjunctions all over the freaking place. They were connected. These two people were connected. It wasn't, I'm going to, this was not just some kind of dirty White House fling. Now, was she a spy? Maybe. I mean, there are rumors that she belonged to the Mossad, that she was a plant. And they've got all kinds of stuff on Bill Clinton as a result of that. I was trying to look at her chart. I was trying to say, well, where would I find the spyness in her chart? Is it Pluto? Maybe. Look, her Pluto's right in his ascendant. She's going to change his life. Not in a good way. He'd be attracted to that Pluto. Look at that Pluto-Mars conjunction. I bet, okay, no sense kind of gross, but I bet you they actually had really good sex. I'll be a good sex. I bet you he was pissed off that all this happened. What about the dress? The blue dress. Linda Tripp. That whole thing. Wow. What a scene, huh? Anyway, and look at her Jupiter in opposition. In opposition with Saturn and Pluto. And where's her Jupiter? It's in the 4th house. Interesting. More. Aquarius, the press, multimedia. Interesting. No, they had a connection. But look, it was destined. Destined. Pluto Moon Square. There's that Pluto Moon Square. It's right there. Boom. Bada boom. Bada bing. Pluto Moon Square. But look at Uranus. Right there. Uranus. The destroyer of Bill Clinton in his first house. So they had something. These two had something. They definitely had Sun-Venus conjunction. That's attraction, right? Sun-Saturn conjunction. That's karmic. Like they had something that they were going to work out here. And then the Moon-Moon conjunction is emotional resonance. You can see why they were together. But it was also destined with Uranus on his Venus to be his personal downfall. Interesting stuff. All right, we got one more chart here tonight. And this is the chart of Elon Musk. Now, I don't know Elon Musk's birth time. So I was playing around with different sort of birth times and rising signs. And for me, it was kind of an interesting exercise in terms of trying to figure out like what's going on with this guy. Can we use the charts, what's happening currently to be able to make some kind of generalized sort of guess about what his rising sign might be. So one of the things that I found that was interesting about Elon Musk, he's going through a bunch of shit, right? Like he's freaking out. Like he's losing everything. And apparently, again, getting back to this Azealia Banks, she was hanging out with him and he did a bunch of acid. And he was tweeting on acid. So that tweet he made about the Saudi investors, that's what he was high on acid. And apparently he loves to use Ambien and booze. He tweeted that too. He's a mess. He's losing everything. You know, the Thomas Edison of our generation, our lifetime, is going to be hitting hard times here soon. I could see where he's going to have that Saturn-Sun opposition. It's coming. Reckoning is coming with the Saturn-Sun opposition. This guy's been given a lot of money by the government, a lot of subsidies, you know, tons of subsidies. And it's amazing how much money that company's losing. So he's got the Saturn. So I worked it out here. I tried to figure this out. I'll tell you why, how. He has 5 kids. One died. Now, I've never seen any of his kids. I've never seen Elon Musk, in a swimming pool with his kids or going horseback riding in Colorado with his kids. But he's got 5 kids. And I think 2 of them are twins and 3 of them are triplets, if I'm not mistaken. Because he and his wife did these all in vitro. Like, he's never been like a real dad. Who knows what's going on with that, right? He's got 5 kids, 2 twins, and I think triplets. So I thought to myself, well, that's kind of a big family. It's a lot of kids, right? So I thought, well, what would that be? Well, he's got twins. Would it be Gemini? No, because if it was Gemini, I have to have Saturn in his 5th house, because he has Saturn in Gemini. People have Saturn in their 5th house don't always have a lot of kids. Maybe with Gemini, he flipped the script and found another way to do it, possibly. So I was looking at an expansive model. Jupiter, right? Lots of kids. Neptune, attached to Jupiter. Kind of strange, right? It's like it's expanding, but it's in Sagittarius. Different. 0 degrees Sag, Jupiter 27, Scorpio. He's going to have his Jupiter return. That might help him out a little bit, is the Jupiter return. It might save his ass. We'll see. We'll see. So I thought, okay, Neptune. Again, it's unusual. Like, I've never seen his kids. Have you ever seen a picture with Elon Musk and his triplets and twins? It's just got to be weird, right? He used technology to hatch these little Elons. And then there's the square to Mars. He's got a Mars square in his chart, Mars Neptune square. According to what's his name, Pelletier. Is his name Pelletier? Robert Pelletier. Like, one of the worst aspects in astrology. Now, what do you do with the Mars Neptune square? You got to stop the bleeding. Like, this guy should not be doing drugs. That's the last thing Elon Musk should be doing, is drugs with a Mars Neptune square. Trust me. Drugs, alcohol. Man, you got to go into rehab, brother. He's got a Mars retrograde going on right now. And the other reason I kind of picked this is because, he made a bunch of money with PayPal, other people's money, internet money exchange. That's Mars, Aquarius, got his true note. He's an Aquarian kind of dude, right? 8th house, other people's money. PayPal's definitely, an Aquarian money exchange. I was like, okay, this works. But he's having problems with his money now, right? He went through that Mars retrograde. So literally his money's going backwards with that Mars retrograde. And he's looking for a new partner, privatizing with the Saudis. Maybe he did a mind meld with them on LSD. Maybe that's what happened. So he's trying to find a new partner. Good luck on that. And then he's going to have Mars go forward again. And when he gets that Mars-Neptune square, which is coming up right now very, very closely, is that right? No, it's going to be about 27 degrees. So we're talking, September, late September, beginning of October, right? Right, beginning, mid-October. Getting into that Mars, be mid-October, right? That Mars-Neptune square, Mars-Mars conjunction. Wherever Mars is in this chart, it's not going to be good. It is not going to be good with that square going on. So the other thing too is apparently he was bullied mercilessly. That's usually like a Mars in the 6th house kind of deal, and I played with that too. But I decided to go with Chiron and Aries on the midheaven, in dealing with male energy, masculine energy, being wounded by other males. So I went with that, and then also Uranus in the 3rd house. Which is, it's technological, kind of ahead of its time, although a lot of people think he's a fraud. But I put it there anyway, and that seemed to kind of work. And Saturn in the 11th house, he's been taking a beating on social networks and Twitter. He's just been taking a beating. That could be very Saturnian. And then the Sun, Mercury in Cancer. He has that kind of roundy Cancer face. And maybe if he was a Cancer, he'd have that anyway. But I just decided, hey, I'm gonna put the Sun in the 1st house. So this is my kind of attempt to rectify his chart in a very kind of quick moment in time. And I took a stab at it. I didn't do a bunch of solar arcs and, but I did look at some events. And the events that really kind of got to me was that those 5 kids, 6, but one died. Maybe he was supposed to have 2 sets of triplets. So it'd be 6, right? Or 33. Wound up being 23. I just thought that was weird. And you never see him with his kids. Anyway, Elon, if you're watching this, you got to stop the drugs, brother. Stop the drugs. Put the Ambien down. Put the acid down. It's not going to save you. You're not going to reach the Godhead and have everything reversed. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to face your trials like a 20th century man, not a 21st century man, a 20th century man. Oh my God. And he's got that Sun-Saturn opposition, Saturn-Mercury opposition. I smell lawsuits coming. with Mr. Musk. Musky lawsuits are in the air. I can smell them. I don't know. Is he a bad guy? I don't know. I don't know enough about him. Certainly, I think he's been running a bit of a scam. Maybe that's part of the Mars-Neptune square. Funny, Azealia Banks, the Gemini in the 12th house, Venus in Gemini, 12th house secrets. So she was definitely, I think it could be an interesting fit as well. Could be a pretty significant fall from grace. Kind of already is. Why couldn't it be Mark Zuckerberg? Why couldn't we see the alien have a fall from grace? That'd be kind of, a graceful fall from grace, right? Let's put it into that Neptune prayer that we did. May the truth be revealed gracefully. All right, let me check in with you people. See how you're doing in there. Okay, he wants to go to Mars. He wants to go to Mars. So he wants to die on Mars. But he wants to die on Mars while he's living there. Doing whatever he's doing. He sold out with his plant in Nevada. Probably sold out in more ways than one. I thought and saw him tweet something about having a portal. Maybe his LSD was his portal. He's in bed with eugenicists making nano spray for June, engineering his plant in Nevada. Wow, Lindgren bringing the deep intel. I'm thinking he got tied in with CIA and his rockets in North Korea. Yeah, that's probably part of it too. That's another piece. That might be the defense piece with the Mars-Neptune square, right? Quite possibly. He is on drugs. That is for darn sure. He is on drugs. All right. Well, I'm on reality. And the reality is that it's 9:40. And I'm about to say goodnight to everybody. So thank you for hanging out, chiming in. And tomorrow I'll be doing an astrological weather report. Astro weather. I'll have links available. You can find them on my Facebook page, my Twitter page, and my homepage on my website about that. So if you want to follow me, it'll be through dialogue, but you don't even have to worry about dialogue. You'll just have the link. So go to my website, go to Facebook, go to Twitter, and that'll happen tomorrow morning, bright and early. If you're interested in a reading, you can go to my website, robertphoenix.com. Got a bunch of readings there for people. The everything reading, people have been digging the everything reading. The everything reading is astrological chart, draconic chart, transits, a lot of time with the natal chart and transits, like about 90 minutes. Draconic charts. What else? I've got your card of destiny, your numbers, your major arcana, and then the Mayan dream spell. And I put it all together. You get a big 40,000 foot view picture. And people dig it. They really dig it. All right. Hey, have a great week. And blessings and love to each and every one of you. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to see what's possible. I'll be back on Friday with the forecast, but keep your eyes open for the Astro weather reports. All right. Have a great night and take good care.